Well, boys, the richest race in the world has officially gotten all 14 of its post positions finalized. It's crazy to me that I said those exact words nearly 4 years ago when talking about the first running of the Saudi Cup. Now it's 2024, and we're getting ready for the 5th running of the race, and it's still going strong with a great field. So, let's try and do this again. Can I finally pick a winner? I mean, I tried and succeeded in 2021 with Mishrif, but since then, I've been down on my luck. But maybe 5th time's the charm. So, let's go through the field one horse at a time, starting with number 1, White Abarrio. Going into the Breeders' Cup Classic, I was not a fan of this horse, even though he was the favorite, and when he did win, I was a little disappointed. I was really rooting for the Japanese horses. But when I put my negative biases aside, he looks really good in this race. The comparison to Nix Go is warranted, as both are horses that started with some potential in their younger years, had a real slump in the middle of their careers, and then with a change in trainer, they were given a new life that resulted in a victory in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Although Nix Go was more of a frontrunner, and White Abarrio is a stalker, the perfect type of horse to win the Saudi Cup. One of the most common ways I have seen horses win at Riyadh on the dirt has been stalking right behind the leaders and then waiting for them to give way so that they can take advantage. With just enough energy saved, they hang on and win. This has been a frequent strategy in the Saudi Derby, and if we're talking about the Saudi Cup specifically, it was how the first 2 runnings of the race were won, right off the pace. Now, of course, since then, Emblem Road has proven that you can come from pretty far off the pace and win. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have Pantalasa's balls-to-the-wall front-running strategy. That did work, of course, but you have to consider that it's Pantalasa we're talking about. Consistently, White Abarrio's archetype is a very good horse to bet on in this race. A horse who waits right behind the leaders, waits for them to give way, and then with a final spurt, goes on and wins. With how he's improving and the fact that he's a little less of a radical frontrunner in comparison to Nix Go, I think he'll fare better than the latter horse. So while he won't be the horse I'm necessarily rooting for, I totally see White Abarrio making perfect sense in this race. Next, we have number 2, Isolate. He started out as a decent sprinter in the States, but when he was shipped over to Meydan, he made his gradual progression from a sprinter over to a miler. And this up in distance has played into his strengths, which was his early speed. In his sprint races, while he was fast, he wasn't consistently fast enough to get the lead he desperately desired. So he would either have to rate, which he wasn't as good at, but not completely terrible at, or he would tire himself out and lose anyway. But with the added distance, his early speed was able to be easier maintained, which is how he won the Godolphin Mile and then the Al Maktoum Mile. So what they're hoping is that this 1-turn mile and an 1/8 race will still play to his strengths, and he'll be able to hold on and still win even with the extra furlong he's going to have to undertake. Now, while there is definitely a lot of positives to be said about this horse, I am not sure he's going to get what he wants. If he's going to win this, he's going to win it similar to how Pantalasa won it last year. The difference was, Pantalasa was easily the fastest horse in the race. Isolate is not as distinguishable, as he's going to have to deal with radical frontrunners like Saudi Crown and Hoist the Gold. So this is going to be a lot harder for him to do what he did in the Godolphin Mile or the Al Maktoum Mile. If he gets the lead, he'll definitely be dangerous, especially if he's able to fend off and win the starting battle with Saudi Crown and Hoist the Gold. But that is if. Otherwise, he's going to have a hard time dealing with extra distance and horses just as fast as him, better adapted to the longer distances that he's going to have to endure. Number 3, Lemon Pop. Easily one of the strongest looking horses in this field. Now, of course, that's not a guarantee of him winning, as we saw with Pantalasa in comparison to Cafe Pharaoh, with Cafe Pharaoh looking way better on paper, but well, I ate my words, let's just say that. Lemon Pop is a very accomplished individual, successfully winning both the February Stakes and the Champions Cup, the only nationally recognized Grade 1 races on dirt in Japan, and both were at slightly different distances, the February being a 1-turn mile, and the Champions Cup being a 1.25 mile classic. Lemon Pop has only lost 4 times in 14 races. The first 2 came when he was recovering from a 1-year hiatus. The other 2 came when he was nailed at the finish line by a nose bob, and the last one was in a deep sprint in the Dubai Golden Shaheen, a race that did not play to his strengths. So really, he has only lost once at a mile or longer. Every other time, horses have had to face his mercy and have gotten none. Lemon Pop is also decently versatile. He could do the Panthalaza trick and do a radical front-running strategy. That is very possible. However, he is also more than capable of rating and taking advantage of tired horses. Meaning that he doesn't have to be just one thing, and he can play to 2 advantageous strategies in Saudi, being near the lead and being opportune to strike. No matter how you slice it, Lemon Pop is nearly unbeatable at a mile or longer, and this will be his ultimate test to see if he's not only one of the best dirt horses in Japan, but the best in the world, and I'm excited to see what he can do. Number 4 is America's underdog, Senor Buscador. Now, if I was gonna put bias into my bets based off of who I think has the coolest story, I think Senor Buscador is one of the most charming horses in this field. Starting out as an Oklahoma maiden, but since then dancing every dance when it comes to the biggest races in America, especially on the West Coast. And while he certainly hasn't done bad, and had the chance to win some pretty cool races, like a very competitive San Diego handicap, he's been a bit spotty in Grade 1 company. He was 4th in the Pacific Classic, well beaten. He came late, but was again decently beaten in the Awesome Again Stakes. Did not show up in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but since then has run pretty strong. The Cigar Mile proved a bit too short for him, but he did rally quite well, and the Pegasus World Cup, a race that is very heavily favored towards frontrunners, he was able to do really well, timing his late closing kick early so that he was only a few lengths from the leaders by the top of the stretch. Now, he did not win the Pegasus World Cup, but he ran a very good race in second, and I'm hoping to see him improve even further with the Saudi Cup, but it's going to be a tall order. For one, just shipping to the Saudi Cup is already a lot to ask for a racehorse. 2, he is prone to throwing bad races because of his late closing ability and constantly getting himself into traffic. And 3, even from his own team, he's going to be facing off against horses who have previously defeated him, such as National Treasure, although they are technically 1-for-1 because he finished ahead in the Awesome Again, and more importantly, White Abarrio. It's certainly possible to see Senor Buscador flying on the outside, picking off tired horses, and maybe even getting up to win akin to Emblem Road. But it's going to be a long shot. A long shot that I'm certainly going to be hoping to see. But it's a long shot for a reason. Good luck, Senor Buscador. This next horse has his name written all over this race, in name only. Saudi Crown. It would be pretty cool to have Saudi Crown win the Saudi Cup, but there's going to be a lot that he's going to have to do. For one, even when he got a good front-running scenario for him to work with, such as the Jim Dandy and Dwyer stakes, when push came to shove, he lost both duels. Sure, he was still right with the other horse, but he lost the head bob both times. He was outgutted in battle, and that's not a good thing, especially because Saudi Crown is not going to be alone on the front end. And when he was really harshly pressed for the lead, like in the Breeders' Cup Classic, that was by far the worst performance of his career. That could very much happen again in the Saudi Cup, akin to what happened to Nick's Go. His battle with Charlatan on the front end absolutely destroyed his energy in the stretch, and even Charlatan to an extent, because Mishriff was able to pick him off. Now, if there's one advantage that Saudi Crown has over the other speedy frontrunners like Isolate and Hoist the Gold, he is actually proven at a mile and an eighth, with his biggest career victory being at this very distance, although it was on 2 turns. So he certainly has the distance capabilities already checked off. Meanwhile, Hoist the Gold and Isolate would have much preferred this race be at a mile flat. So that is one thing in his corner. But his history with duels and dealing with pressure have not been the best. So for this race, I'm not sure he's going to be hanging on in the final quarter unless he gets a dream setup. Continuing with the Crown trend, we have Crown Pride for Japan, starting his globe-trotting with a win in the UAE Derby, and then running in the Kentucky Derby, albeit unsuccessfully. He ran in this race a year ago and was 5th, mostly to other Japanese horses, and then the same thing happened in the Dubai World Cup, where he was 5th to better Japanese horses. His biggest international success since the UAE Derby was a win in the Korea Cup, where he basically just went down and just robbed the whole place. It was a very impressive win, but the Korea Cup is not to the same level as the Saudi Cup. Still, it was a pretty cool race. After that, he finished 11th in the Champions Cup, which is by far one of his worst performances to date. Consistently, Crown Pride has been just kinda there. He has danced every dance, but he also just doesn't win a lot, especially not at the top level. So while I'm happy to see him giving this another shot, I feel like there are many other better options, even from just the Japanese colony in this race. Halfway through the field, we have number 7, National Treasure, the winner of last year's Preakness Stakes, also now the winner of the Pegasus World Cup, a race I did not think he was going to win, and more importantly, just didn't want him to win. However, he proved me wrong, and I have to admit, it was a pretty good performance. He stayed right alongside Hoist The Gold, and then held off a late-charging Senor Buscador. I could definitely see National Treasure running a good race in Saudi up on the front end, or raiding right behind and conserving his energy, but if he's anything like the other Baffert horses that have tried this race, second is the best he's going to do. Baffert seems to have a real bad case of second-itis in the Saudi Cup. Starting out with Charlatan being outdone by Mishrif, then Country Grammar was both nailed at the finish by Emblem Road, and then flew late to miss Panthalaza, finishing second in the exact opposite ways. Now, National Treasure certainly has improved a lot in his last 2 races, only losing the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile by a nosebob, and then running a pretty great race in the Pegasus World Cup. But, at the same time, horses that have run in the Saudi Cup for Bob Baffert have both looked better and worse. It's a very interesting bag. The horses that have looked best for Baffert, such as, say, Taba, definitely did not run the race that they were hoping for, but then horses who weren't going into the Saudi Cup at their best, like Country Grammar, made it work. So for what's going to happen in National Treasure, I'm not completely sure, but if he runs anything like he did in the Pegasus World Cup, he's going to be pretty good. And the horse that was right beside National Treasure in the beginning parts was Hoist the Gold. This horse is a bit of a mixed bag, because he is one of the fastest horses here, but he's also a bit of a slower starter. He doesn't have great gate speed, but he certainly has good early speed otherwise. A bit of a paradoxical moveset, to say the least. His attempt at 1.1 miles for the first time in the Pegasus World Cup didn't necessarily go well. He went to the lead like he always did, but he tired out quite late and finished 4th distantly. But this race could be a bit easier for him, because he was always a better one-turn horse, so a one-turn 1.1 miles might be a bit easier for him to deal with, so I don't think this is a bad choice. But, like I've mentioned before with Saudi Crown and Isolate, he's going to have to deal with a bit of a barrage of frontrunners all wanting the same position he does, and he still is going to have to go longer than he is normally used to, and has yet to prove he can do good. Speaking of Baffert horses, number 8, Defunded. So, about a year ago, in the 2023 Pegasus World Cup, he was the Baffert favorite, and that time, it didn't work. He did pretty well, but he lost to Art Collector. After that, Defunded kind of skulked the whole California racing scene, running in every major California stop you could think of, and doing, well, he was doing alright, but he started tailing off towards the end of it. He did run alright in the Awesome Again, but he had some really spotty performances down at Del Mar. It seems like Santa Anita is his preferred racetrack. But now he's going over to Riyadh, at the age of 6 years old. Some might say that's a little old to be trying new things, but keep in mind, Country Grammar did try this as well, and almost got it, just missing out on Panthalaza, although the Dubai World Cup certainly did not go as well, but that's besides the point. Defunded is very similar to Country Grammar, and in fact, the two have traded blows before, with Defunded coming out on top. And then when he ran in the Awesome Again stakes again to try and defend his title, while he did lose to Slow Down Andy, he still did defeat National Treasure and Senor Buscador. So while you can argue that he might just be a little over the hump, A lot of the hottest horses in America right now going into the Saudi Cup were defeated by this guy. So you can't count him out just yet. I could imagine him doing a Country Grammar-esque comeback in the Saudi Cup, despite going into the race with less than stellar performances. I personally will not use him, but it's important to mention these details. In post number 10, we have Power in Numbers, the first Saudi representative, and the only horse from the Saudi group to not be sired by Quality Road. Despite being 50-1 morning line, he really does not deserve it, as he's by far the best of these Saudi imports. In a funny coincidence with Isolate, both horses started by running in America and won a stakes race called the Tail of the Cat Stakes. The only difference is that there's two different races called the Tail of the Cat, one run at Saratoga and the other run at Monmouth Park. So we have two Tail of the Cat Stakes winners, just different races with the same name. Funny coincidences aside, after this race, he was sent to King Abdulaziz to start his career in Saudi Arabia. His first race, he lost to Scotland Yard, but since then, he has won 4 in a row, and if it weren't for that isolated defeat, he would have come into this race with a 7-race winning streak. After this introductory defeat, Power in Numbers went up the ranks. He won an allowance, and then he won multiple stakes races, and most recently took the Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques Cup, the major local prep for the Saudi Cup. And in that very race, he flipped the result against Scotland Yard, having another head-to-head duel with the horse, and this time coming back and winning. Showing a decent display of guts, as he lost the lead in the stretch to Scotland Yard and had every right to lose, but he decided to balk at the challenge and win. So he certainly has guts, he has rating ability, which means that he has an opportune running style similar to many other horses in this field. He's about as good as a Saudi import representative would be, especially with his winning streak. But if history is anything to go off of, the best Saudi representative on paper does not always win. Now it's time for Japan once more, with Ushba Tesoro, the winner of the Dubai World Cup. You guys know that I love this horse to pieces, but I don't think he's the right horse for this race, and this seems more like a prep to get him ready for the Dubai World Cup and a possible title defense. Ushba Tesoro is a come-from-behind horse through and through, similar to Senor Buscador, and while he certainly is advanced of age, he has yet to show any signs of slowing down. The big reason why I don't think this will be the race for him is because this is a one-turn race. A lot of Ushba's greatest victories, his 2 wins in the Tokyo Daishoten, his win in the Dubai World Cup, and even his prep races for those victories, all were 2-turn races. He always liked running further. He is a classic distance horse, so this shortened 1 1/8 is actually going to work against him. It's just something he's never proven that he's very good at. I could see him maybe flying late, and I'd love to eat my words and see Ushba win this race. It simply plays against everything that's great about Ushba Tesoro, the fact that the longer the race goes, the stronger he gets. This ain't that kind of race. Now, originally, we were going to have a trio of Japanese horses back-to-back. However, Meisho Hario has scratched, and thus an also eligible has slipped in, making our next horse, number 13, Derma Sotogake. This horse I've had mixed feelings about since his Derby trial, but I've always thought he was charming. Now, one thing that's important to note here is that before he really got his time in the spotlight with his victory in the UAE Derby in a gate-to-wire performance, Derma Sotogake ran in the Saudi Derby and was very clearly outclassed. Commissioner King and Having a Meltdown both went to the lead and ran him off his feet, as Derma desperately tried to catch up the whole way around. On one hand, you could say that this is a suggestion that maybe he's going to have to play catch-up once more and fail in the Saudi Cup, but on the other hand, this kind of thing has happened before and has worked well historically. Mishrif flew late but could not catch the winner of the Saudi Derby. The following year, he won the Saudi Cup with the extra furlong in his favor. That could be Derma Sotogake this year, as by all accounts, he has never looked better according to his trainers. And it's also very important to note that he has looked worse before. The Breeders' Cup Classic, he looked really bad, not running since the Kentucky Derby. Imagine what he could have done if he actually had a prep race. The fact that he beat every horse except White Abarrio in the Breeders' Cup Classic off a 5-month layoff and multiple setbacks says a lot about this horse. I may also have some personal bias with Derma Sotogake, as at the Breeders' Cup, I volunteered and had the chance to be a flag holder. So I got the chance to see Derma Sotogake up close and hold his number for him as he prepared for his date with the Breeders' Cup in the paddock. He seems to be improving at just the right time, and I look forward to seeing what else this horse has in his future. I love a well-traveled animal like Derma Sotogake. Number 14, Carmel Road. Now, on paper, with a name like that, you might think, well, Emblem Road won this race, so Carmel Road must be right behind. Although, besides that, Carmel Road and Emblem Road are different horses with similar accomplishments, as both horses used the 1 Mile King Faisal Cup as a prep race before running in the Saudi Cup. Whether that will work for Carmel Road, we're about to find out, as he isn't as much like Emblem Road, not a deep closer, but instead a stalker, like many other horses here. So that deep closing kick that Emblem Road had is not something in common with Carmel Road. But, if you believe in superstitions, having a horse by the same sire, Quality Road, with the same ending name, in Road, running in the Saudi Cup with the same win in the same prep race, then go for this one. And lastly, number 15, and also eligible this year, but at one point a favorite for the Saudi Cup last year, Scotland Yard. Going into last year's Saudi Cup, he had a 3-race winning streak and was looking to replicate what Emblem Road had. But now the boot's on the other foot. Emblem Road ended up blowing the break, but still finished better than Scotland Yard. However, Scotland Yard internally bled during the race, so you're going to have to excuse it. After a long break, he returned pretty well and actually defeated Power and Numbers. But after that, the other two Saudi representatives have beaten him. He was 6th in the King Faisal Cup to the aforementioned Carmel Road, and then lost his second duel with Power and Numbers. So, if that's concerning for you, then you might want to skip this horse. But with how hopeless Emblem Road did look, for him to finish half decently in his failed title defense in the Saudi Cup, we could see a coincidental improvement with Scotland Yard, with hopefully his respiratory issues now in the past. But I'm not going to go for him. So who would I go for? I am going to lean more towards the stalking horses that are going to be waiting on the downfall of the radical frontrunners, because I think this race is going to have a lot of pace and possibly a meltdown. Heck, even some come-from-behind horses could do some damage. So my 3 main choices for this are Lemon Pop, Derma Sotogake, and Power and Numbers as a long shot pick. Tell me who you think is going to win this year's Saudi Cup in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it informative. And I'll see you guys next time. Saturday is going to be a great day of racing.